broadcasting live out of a basement in Appleton, Wisconsin. You're tuned into Fox Cities Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. We're the show that gives you an opportunity to call in and be a part of the show. Our call-in line is 920-358-0795. Core. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fox Cities Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. If this is your first time tuning in, WCZR is an independent streaming rock station based out of Appleton, Wisconsin. My next guest is the president and CEO of Willems Marketing. He's also the founder of Mile of Music, which started in 2013. It kicks off for its 11th time next week. I'd like to welcome Dave Willems to Fox Cities Core. How are you doing, Dave?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me over. And I thought when that music started a little bit that maybe that was something going on inside my head, because at this time of the year, you just never know. So it's pretty busy.
People probably think like the week before Mile is when you're the busiest, but is there a time that you're more busy than the week before, or is everything pretty much settled at this point?
Yeah, it's a small team, and I think everybody has a different period of time where they're the busiest. And then as it gets closer to the festival, there's just a lot of logistical stuff going on. So it does get, I think, heightens from a standpoint of business for everybody. And then you have things like in the case of the lineup where there might be changes, and then Ian has to really jump and address those, or there might be some things that are extra that we have to do with some of our partners and sponsors and so forth. So yeah, everybody kind of has that really busy time during the year where they're maybe at peak, and then at the end we all kind of jump in together and try to put little fires out and so forth.
Well, before we even talk about the festival, which
sure.
Let's talk a little bit about your background. What was your profession before you started Mile of Music, and what got you kind of driven towards what you're doing with Willems Marketing? Sure,
and I should point out, by the way, thanks for wearing the shirt, because normally I'm, in the since the pandemic, probably there's been maybe 30 days that I haven't worn a Mile of Music shirt. I wore it throughout the pandemic and stuff, just kind of as a way to remind myself that things are going to get better. But and I didn't wear one today, so this is a rarity for me. But thanks for doing that. We basically, I started the marketing firm back in 1999, and we just celebrated 25 years as a marketing firm. The last 10 years have been quite a bit different. Obviously, the last 11 years since we started the festival and the kind of the original music collective that we've been creating through the firm, using that marketing capability to kind of just create the brand and create kind of the movement that we've been looking to do here, and it's kind of evolved from the festival. Obviously, the background for me, worked for a firm out of Milwaukee right out of college. First in college, I worked for a couple of years for the Packers in marketing, and that got me a little bit of a different perspective on some things, both good and bad, when it comes to the NFL and so forth, but was generally a good experience. I was just telling you, I saw a photo over on your shelf with picture with Bart Starr, and he was one of the folks I worked the closest with, and learned a fair amount of stuff about, I think, just kind of business behavior, professionalism, those types of things. He was a super individual when it came to paying attention to what other people needed, what other people were concerned about, and just really was a cool fella from that standpoint. And so I was able to glean some of that from him. My mentor there was Lee Remmel, who was the PR director and marketing person for the Packers at the time, and had a chance to just glean quite a bit of stuff from him as well as it related to, handling the media, working with the media, trying to make sure that the media got what they needed. So there was a little bit of that background. And that's what turned me from being a journalist into the marketing PR side of things, was my experience with the Packers. Took a job right out of college with a firm out of Milwaukee that went on to become one of the biggest sales promotion companies in the world, called GMR. And GMR did a lot of music and comedy and entertainment and sponsorship activity. They were one of the first ones doing sponsorship. So as part of that role, I was able to get down to South by Southwest, its second and third year that it existed. So that dates me a little bit, but everybody can tell, and everybody who knows me knows that I'm getting on up there in years. So, but I was at year 2 and year 3 for South by Southwest. And that was a chance. We basically were there to promote what was called the Miller Band Network, and it was for Miller Brewing Company. We had a 10 by 10 booth. South by Southwest was really a music conference then that had music showcases at night, and their pledge to the artists was, we'd like you to come and play, I think pretty much for free, and then they promised to have music executives and other folks there watching their shows, and they did, and they were successful at that, and then it just ballooned from there right into what it became, and then eventually added film and added tech and all those things. But those first 2 or 3 years, it was pretty genuine. And so fast forward all these years later, when I'm having a meeting with a lot of the downtown folks, the businesses were saying, basically, can we come up with an event that puts people into our businesses, not out on the street and so forth. We already have those. Those are great. But could we have something that brings people in? And so as I walked back to my office, I first thought of sports and thought about kind of bringing in athletes, retired athletes, doing a bunch of cool round tables that would be neat. We have all these different bars that we could do that. And then I immediately thought, well, wait a minute. Music is even better. It's more accessible. It's more universal. And the musicians at the level that we're talking about tend to be easier to work with than professional athletes. So it was a pretty easy decision. By the time I got back to the office, I was like, we could do our own version of South by Southwest, just in maybe the way it was the first 10 years of its existence. And so that's where the idea started to gel. The first person I told the idea to was Nathan Litt. Nathan's a cool fella from around the area here. He was a Lawrence grad. He was working with us at the time. And he was like, we got to do this. And so then the next person I told was my brother, who was a partner in the business. And he said, gee, I'm guessing you're going to do this anyway. He seemed pretty hyped about it. He said, so if I say no, how's that going to be? He said, so let's give it a try. And, he knew that I was more of a community guy than I was a business guy. So I think at that point it became a situation where did we think it was going to be what it became? Probably not. Did we think it had great potential for our downtown? Having worked with so many of the businesses downtown, having worked with Appleton Downtown Incorporated for years, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the PAC, I had great confidence that the partnerships that it takes to do something like this, I think a lot of other communities don't realize because they approach us to see if we can help them put on a mile of music type thing. And I always give them the scoop on just what's involved in what we're doing, the in-kind support, the cash support, the venue hosting support. They don't realize what's all involved that way. And so it's been an intricate kind of web that we've woven, I think. And it's pretty unique and pretty special to a place like downtown Appleton where you have that mile. When we first came up with the name was an intern who came up with, amongst his names was the musical mile, Henry Bremhorst. And then I took that list over to Wood and Nickel and just had a burger and fries and was working through the list and coming up with different variations. And when I got to Musical Mile, I started working on it and came up with Mile of Music. I thought, well, that's it. And so then, of course, you have to decide, well, it can be a figurative mile of music, which it is, a lot of music, as Rusty Zaspel once said, a fire hose of music. But is it a literal mile? And so I got in the car and I drove from the chapel down to Spats, and it was, I think at the time, was 0.95. And I was like, yes, it's also a literal mile. So it was a pretty cool moment when we did that, and that was over the holidays of 2012. And then by the time we got rolling, it was spring, and then 2013 was the first year.
Prior to having the idea to focus on music and not sports, were you taking in a lot of live music at that point in your life? Actually,
no, because I was kind of one of those folks that I always refer to the fact that we have a lot of interest from younger folks. We have a ton of interest from older folks. It's that 20-year gap in the middle where people are going to their kids' plays, going to their kids' sporting events. It's that 20-year period when they're raising kids, not everybody, but when they're doing that, where the music thing becomes a whole different ball game. You get it where you can, right? And most of the time, so I was in that situation where I had running a business. We were doing a ton of stuff for a lot of local nonprofits. Kind of people thought we were a community marketing firm and not really a for-profit firm, and in some ways we weren't. And so we were doing all that and had 2 kids. And so we were doing the stuff that, trying to get to as much of that as we could. So I always refer to the fact that we get the couples, they eventually come back. And I kind of joke and I kind of rub my hands again and say, they eventually come back. But eventually they come back, but it's once they get to the point where, had a guy come in one time to one of our shows we were doing, I think it was an Outer Edge show or something. And he got there about 9 o'clock. The show was going till like 11. He got there about 9:30, maybe it was even 10. And he sought me out and he goes, I got to tell you this story. He said, I was leaving the house and my daughter was home from college, and it was like a holiday time frame. And he said, and she was there with 5 of her friends and they were playing a board game. And she said, where are you going? He said, I was walking out the door at 9:15 or 9:45. And he said, I'm going out to catch me some music. And he said, I closed the door and I thought, boy, the shoe's on the other foot here. And so I think there's a lot of that goes on. It's people kind of rediscovering music after they've had other priorities in their lives and so forth. So I fit that category very much, and had not been to a lot of stuff. I was pretty much listening to music just on CDs in my car, and that was about it. And I was catching what I could. And then we were doing the book festival as a marketing firm. We were helping to found that and get it rolling. And we did a couple of charity shows with Corey Chisel. And in that process of doing that with Corey, I just noticed the reactions from the crowd in the background. I tend to be more of a producer, presenter type guy than having to be like up in the front row and all those types. I like to sit back and kind of see if I'm about creating experiences. And so people always ask me, are you a musician? Are you really into music? All those things. And the answer is I'm into creating experiences. And so I sat back and just watched the reactions of the crowd and how into it they were and how appreciative they were of what Corey was doing, and then having the chance to talk to him after the show. And I just watched all of that and thought there's something to that for sure. And then it all kind of gelled when I ran that meeting, and it was like, let's come up with an event that can bring all this together.
And then year 1, of course, was probably pretty intimidating. You're doing something new. It was 2013, and the original things that I remember seeing were they were looking for bands.
Yeah.
Kind of the excitement, like, well, what's going on? What is this new music festival that's coming to Appleton? And I think there was a submission online where you could just enter a band's name.
Yeah.
Right? And that was like the first. And
yeah.
Did you have at that point Kurt Kempen helping you with that?
So what happened is, we had this idea, and then I started to pitch it to folks over the holidays for sponsorships. People that I knew, clients of mine, so forth. And I had Cypress Benefit Administrators at the time was the first one. It was at their house, and I said, and he goes, yeah, we're in, that kind of thing. So I kind of gradually built up a few that, hey, how much money are we going to have? How's this going to work? Went to Fox Communities, got an initial loan, pretty much a no-interest loan from the CEO at the time, Greg Hilbert, and they've been a supporter ever since. And we created a civic account. So we had this account that was kind of in between a business account and a community account. It's called the civic account. We had $15,000 in it. And then we started putting the sponsorship money in as it came in. And we basically, that was on May 2nd, and then May 9th we announced the festival. And we announced it without really having booked one artist at that point. We had some ideas of who, and we had talked to some people, but we hadn't booked anybody yet. And then that's when Kurt reached out through Jean Dachin, who was one of our small core of people helping to advise the festival and so forth. And she'd been to a number of different festivals and had a lot of feel for the community as well. And said, hey, I've been doing some booking for some things and be interested in helping out. And so he came on board as a volunteer to start with. But that first year, we then had to come up with a process. So how are we going to actually formalize bringing these artists in? And we ended up with 107 acts that first year, 220 sets of music. And then by the second year, it ballooned to 220 acts and 600 plus. And then from that point on, we kind of were in that ballpark of anywhere from 600 to 900 sets of music. This year, I think we're at 700 or so when you factor in the bus and the pop-ups and some of those types of things. So but even that first year, we, I think, surprised ourselves a little bit. We all, that we had that much of a festival. And, the Post Crescent was huge for us that first year, doing articles about, kind of what was coming up and so forth. And so we were able to get the word out, and that was huge. I obviously cashed in a few chips, probably more than a few chips, probably more than I realized I cashed in with local media and folks. We'd always had great relationships with them, and because we'd done so much with community organizations over the years, I think they felt like our hearts were in the right place, and so they were willing to jump in and help us out. And so we leveraged some of that goodwill, and our local media are great to begin with. I mean, they're just accessible and easy to work with and so forth. And they have a job to do. They have tough stories to do too, but they were great and have been great ever since. And so we were able to get that launched. And I've told this story, and some of your listeners have certainly heard this story, where we were housed that first year out of the old Conkeys bookstore, and we had one grill in the back, and Stone Arch was cooking the artist food. And did Pudge play that first year?
We did not.
You did not. Okay, but they must have played like year 2 or 3 or somewhere right in there then.
Four
or 5. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. And so we had one grill going. We had 4 tables in the back for your artist lounge, and it was cool. And we John Zimmerman ended up getting 2 or 3 offers to purchase the building from having let us use it, which was a neat thing. But we didn't know what to expect at all. And the story I've told before is how with the very first set, and of course we had those tornadoes that came through on Monday night into Tuesday, and power was down, and we had said the one thing that could get us would be like a power outage, and it's like, really? And so by Thursday morning, there were 3 or 4 venues that on the outsides of the grid, like Spats, Stone Arch, that still didn't have their power yet. Spats got their power, I think, at like 10 o'clock in the morning. First show was at 11:30, and so we were rolling at 11:30 with Roger Giacella, singer-songwriter. Roger ended up having a full patio, and there were about 60 people in the parking lot. The volunteer called in and said, "I was told I was supposed to call in what things are looking like down here." And we're all like, "Yeah." And he says, "Yeah, and we had it on speakerphone." And he goes, "We got a full patio, and there's like 60 people watching from the parking lot." We all cheered. So it was like, hey, maybe there is something here. And so I think since that time, it's been, I remember someone telling me year 2, after the second year, when we had the little after party down at Spats, and I was walking into Spats heading toward the restrooms, and he was coming out, and he said, he said, "How are we going to keep this from becoming South by Southwest? How do we keep this from becoming too commercial? How do we keep this from not having a soul?" And I was like, it was so well said, but it kind of caught me off guard as I was walking in, because I was kind of ready to just have a beer. and I was like, I said, I think the key is we all have to just work together. We have to remember what this is, and we have to say, let's not try to make it too big. And so from that time on, we've really tried to cultivate it. It got bigger, but at a certain point, mile 5, mile 6, we started talking more about better, not bigger, and that's really been important. It's hard for me as a marketing PR guy to not be out there pumping it everywhere I go, but we've really kind of generally, I say, laid low, and then yesterday we were on the front page of the Journal Sentinel. So those things happen. They approach us, and we aren't going to say no necessarily, because the minute you say no, you might not get that call back again. So, and then we have PBS Wisconsin coming this year, so to video and do a ton of work. And so what that will look like next year, how we adjust to that and those things, I think that's going to be really important. But I think if we all work together, I mean, when I say that, I mean the artists, the fans, there's room for some more infrastructure within what we're doing. Not a ton, I don't think. There's ways to have other spin-off type activities that allow for us to build the brand and allow for people to access what we're doing in downtown Appleton without necessarily saying the festival has to change drastically. So,
well, and you've obviously learned along the way how you wanted to do ticketing. It's a free festival, but the first year there was it was kind of
VIP thing.
It was kind of confusing because you could pick like an
three
option.
venues. There were 3 venues. Yeah, and we had a VIP thing.
Yeah, and that ended up obviously you got rid of that.
It didn't work. Well, you had all this free music, and then you're trying to charge $15 to go into 3 venues, right? And so, I think it could work now, but it wasn't going to work then, And I think there's a level of something we probably, just from a financial stability standpoint, will have to do some form of a level of extra mile or something like that allows people to purchase and upgrade up. We do have the Music Maker badges, and those are awesome. We have a festival only, a deluxe badge, and a premier badge, and that was very helpful to us this year, by the way. It's extremely helpful. We got about 100 people that bought the premiere, and it's just the beginning for that and building. We have the same number of music makers as we had the previous year, but it's just that some of them are at a higher level with the premiere. And then we had a number who have bought, as expected, this festival only, which is just for the 4 days of the festival, and it gets them a chance if their adult kids are coming home or brother or sister coming from another part of the country, where they can go to some of the same things because they have the Music Maker badge. But then the Music Maker thing really became a cool deal because it allowed us to start building a base year-round of people that felt connected and wanted to be connected, and that's, I think, benefited not just us, it's benefited our efforts at Gibson Community Music Hall, it's benefited other venues as well, in that this core of music folks realize that for not a lot of money, just for a little extra money, they can really have a little extra experience too. So,
well, you really do take care of the music makers. If you're hitting the mile hard, like there are a lot of people that they pride themselves on trying to make it to an X amount of shows.
Gee, I wonder who you mean by that. Yeah. I could think about 5 or 10 right away. Yeah.
This gives them the opportunity to go into the PAC, and you've got like light snacks, water, things.
Yep.
They can just kind of decompress and then recharge and get out there and go see more.
That's right. And we have a little kick up your feet for the premier music makers in the hotel this year. There's nothing really there other than just some chairs and some tables to go and relax. And that's probably going to be important this year with as warm as it's going to be, with it looking like it's going to be both warm and humid. It's important that, everybody takes a moment, by the way, I'll just say real quick, to just be safe and watch out for each other and all that sort of stuff, because it's going to be a little bit more of I think, a slog this year for a walking music festival with walkability up and down the avenue and all over. I think it's going to be a little trickier, especially now that we were just talking about this yesterday. You have some issues with, artists having illnesses and so forth. It's like, oh, that's right. It's not just me who's 11 years older. When we started the festival, everybody's 11 years older. So there's a little bit of that going on too.
Have you heard any feedback from people that don't want the festival to expand? Because there's been stages every year that kind of come and go. You've really added on. There was
tweaking.
Yeah.
Lately, it's been tweaking. There was a while there where we cut back a fair amount because it was just like we had a lot of music in spaces where it just wasn't good. It just wasn't quality,
Riverside added on kind of a walk to the south.
Yep, yep, right. Between that whole Eagle Flats area with Stone Arch and Riverside and making our way to some different areas. And now we have Mondo on the River, which took over for the Keela Cafe, I think it was, and then before that it was, of course, Rivertime Bistro and Atlas before that. So it's a space that's changed hands a few times. But having some stuff down in that area, the cool part about Riverside and Stone Arch, of course, they were no-brainers because they do a good job of what they do. They both want to do music, and they are doing music throughout the summer. And they create a nice experience at their spaces. They add some value, and we've always said, if we're going to look to do things, whether it's promotional stuff, sponsorship stuff, like when Brian Gottlieb approached me about the singing in the shower. We were kicking around, and obviously he sold showers. So he's like, could we do singing in the shower? And I was like, well, we can't do it just for it, And he said, and he came back to me. I said, well, how can we make it a little more genuine and authentic and something meaningful? And the next day he came back and said, how about this? We do sing in the shower, and for every 250 that sing in the shower, I give away a youth scholarship for music. And I said, that's it. That's enough to make it less hokey and more palatable and more interesting, and it adds value to the festival. And we've been doing singing in the shower ever since, and it's really become kind of a fun little. It's the only thing we do that isn't original. People are in there singing whatever they want to sing, but it's become a cool little add-on. And so we've always tried to look at extra things with the festival. How do they add value to what we're doing?
Well, the shower was kind of exciting because if you aren't a musician, you can still perform at Mile of Music by singing in the shower. And you never know what's going to happen there. And I've heard you talk about it before, but one of the things about Mile is you don't know what's going to happen. I
Right.
saw Richie Ramone sing a Ramone song in the shower, which was interesting. So,
That year was interesting. We kind of did a special push to get folks to go into the shower, artists to go into the shower. I remember there's a great photo. I think he won the photo contest. They did a photo contest of the best photo from singing in the shower. It was Jake Willis, one of our artists, Jaik, Jake Willis, and I think he was out of Chicago, and he was I think individual, but also part of a band, another where he played guitar or something. But he was in there rocking on the guitar, and he had really long hair, and he did one of these, and the hair was and it was just an awesome shot, and he won the photo that year. So we did every year there where we were kind of making a little extra push for the artists to jump in there, and it was kind of a cool year for the singing in the shower for sure.
as far as talking about growing pains, is it hard to turn down if somebody, because everybody wants to be a part of it?
Yeah.
And so is it hard to say no sometimes to people?
Hands down hardest part. I know Ian would tell you that for sure. I would tell you that because I see a lot of the same comments and requests and stuff now that we're doing a lot with Gibson Music Hall as part of the umbrella for Mile, and it is the most difficult piece. We had 750 submissions this year in 1 week. It was nice to open that up to submissions, and we told everybody it's a long shot to get in that way. We only take a handful of artists through the submission process. Most of our artists come now through some of these agencies, through other artist referrals, like, hey, this is great band back in Charlotte, that kind of thing. And then there's the submissions. And a year ago we did it. We had 150 submissions in an hour and a half, and we had to shut it down. And there were a lot of disappointed people that were working. They were baristas. They were coming home. They were getting ready to submit, and then they couldn't. So this year we just said, we're going to leave it open. Submit to play the festival. Submit to play Appleton. We'll share some of that information with other venues and so forth. And since that, we've also gotten like 200 more. So we're sitting at like almost 1,000 submissions. We have local music fans that do the reviewing of them. We give them 25 each or 50 each, and they go through and they give us their thoughts. So everybody gets heard, everybody gets reviewed, and that's what we promised, that's what we pledged. And it's both, it's very humbling to know that there's that many folks that want to come here, but we've really, Appleton as a whole, when I say we, in this case for sure, but almost all the time I'm referring to not just the Mile team, not just the Mile team and its sponsors and partners. I'm talking about the entire 4,000 pairs of hands that make the festival happen, that make the movement happen throughout the year, have created a very special thing here in Appleton. And it's something that doesn't exist, and the artists tell us this all the time. It does not exist elsewhere. And the idea of really helping artists that are at the level that they're at, the artists, as Jamie Kent refers to, the working musicians, or I refer to them as the artists you don't know but you should, or the artists who aren't household names but should be. That level, there are so many really good artists out there, probably several thousand in the country. They all, when you book them or you bring them in, they all will deliver a really good show. And so knowing that we are a community and that we are a festival that is geared toward them and specifically geared toward them, we're not trying to bring in big names. We're not trying to, it's really hard to do that with a free music festival, to try to all of a sudden compete with. It would be impossible. So I'm really glad we went the route we did. By mile 2 or 3, we had decided, hey, yeah, we're going to have an occasional breakout like a Sturgill Simpson or something like that, or a record company who gets to that next level. But the reality is, what we're here for is for those artists who have created some really good original music and want to just come and play for a crowd that actually wants to kind of pay attention, or in some cases really pay attention, and wants to respect them. And so that's what we've created, and by all working together.
Well, and then I've heard the complaint from people before, like, why don't they just start charging?
Right.
And it's the whole idea that you had originally was to be a free music festival.
It was the idea was to create a demand, and then where does that take us? What can we do? There's several venues, there's several places who are doing very well because the demand was created, and so the idea was, how do you create a music scene? It's by creating more than one thing. And so the festival can be the core, but you still have to have your other venues. You still have to have your other events throughout the year. So It is a legitimate comment. It comes up every year. It wasn't always a legitimate comment. It is a legitimate comment now that we have to look at it and say, so for financial stability, how do we make sure that how do we get a little selfish? How do we monetize a little bit here to make sure that there is enough money coming in that we can continue to be the flag bearers for this effort here? How do we continue to make it very community-based, keep it community-based? It's a little weird because you have a situation where you have a for-profit entity, but they're creating a non-profit, essentially, event. That's what we did. We never have made money at it. We've built a little bit of a team, but we're actually smaller at Willems Marketing and events than we were when we started this in terms of number of people. Most of those people are working on the festival. So we've transitioned to that. Now we have to look at it, and really tap into our business leaders in the community and other folks to be at the table to say, what's the best way for this now to be secured for years into the future, and what would that look like? And I do think there's going to be a level of some sort of an opportunity to buy a wristband or whatever, but it's not going to be for the whole festival in the sense that I think there'll still be a very strong free component into the future. Those type of things. Maybe it won't change that much, but we don't know that yet. But there will be some tweaks to it for sure. One of the challenges with I'll just, for your listeners, many of whom are very looped into what we're doing, many of them have helped to get this thing off the ground. It is really important when you start talking about charging something, that changes the discussion we have with our artists. It changes the discussion we have with their agents, big time. It changes the discussion we have with our venues, because the venues now have run the risk of not having 200 people in their venue at a certain time. Maybe they have 100 because those folks are making more discerning decisions about where they want to go to see their music. And the biggest thing is, for the people who buy the wristband or buy the ticket, now their decision-making process as well as their appreciation process changes significantly. And I really wanted this to be something that all of us who worked on it, the 4,000 pairs of hands who make it happen, can feel good about it, feel really comfortable with it, and then have a really cool, good vibes approach to it. And once you start doing some of that, now if you're the music fan who's going to 6 venues and you couldn't get into any of them until the 6th one on a Saturday night because they were all busy and full, right now you go online and you text and you say, this is really a cool festival. I had to wait in line several places. I finally got into a place and the band is awesome. That's a different mentality than all of a sudden now you've paid, say, $50 for a wristband for the weekend. Now it's like, I just went to this festival and I couldn't get into the first 5 venues I went to and I had to go to a 6th venue. The whole mindset changes. And so I think that's why it has to be really thought through and discussed, and we have to be ready to have that conversation also with the venues. The venues have to feel like, okay, I'm willing to take a chance on that. They all took a chance on the festival to start with. There was nobody who said no. And the reason was we didn't charge them anything the first year. Since that time, the only thing the venues have had to pay to us is at the end of the festival, after all is done, after all the money they've made, if they've made a lot of money. They don't all make a crazy amount of money. Some do and some don't. Most of them make a decent amount of money, or all of them do. And I hope that most of them or all of them make more than they normally do on a weekend. There's people in the community who tell you they make a lot more than they do on the weekend. But, but when it's all said and done, then it's a 10% of their gross. So me at Gibson, if we make $30,000 or $40,000 that weekend, then we pay $3,000 or $4,000 back. We don't have to pay anything up front. The venues like Deja Vu and other venues in the past that have commented, they didn't pay anything up front. So they didn't pay for the artists. They didn't pay for the sound tech. They didn't pay for the whatever. In some cases, they might have their own stuff. Like at Gibson, we have all our own stuff, right? But we get this amazing gift. And at the end of it, with no risk, right? There's no risk involved. At the end of it, I then have to pay some of that back. So it's a heck of a deal. It's probably such a good deal that there are people going, they should pay more. Well, now you start to upset that apple cart because you really want the venues to be good, feel good about this, be excited about it, and I think they do. And the other piece is this was an economic driver idea too, and we absolutely love the fact that the folks who are doing a lot of the work during the festival, which are the hospitality workers, they're busting their buns, and it's really cool that they get to make some nice tips, and it's really cool that they get to have a weekend where they can feel proud about the work they've done and how it's helped their venue, but also helped the festival and helped the community, and they should get rewarded for that. So it's one of the reasons we don't do a lot of things like trying to do over-the-top donation requests at the venues, because we want the tip money to go, that kind of thing. There's other ways to make donations to Appleton Community Music and so forth, which we're going to do more and more of this year. But we always want that tip money. We don't have other nonprofits involved at the venues because we want that tip money to go to the hospitality workers.
Well, the point that it's free, me being going to the festival, I'm thinking in my mind I didn't pay for tickets, so yeah, I'm going to maybe buy a drink from a bar or buy some merchandise or spend some money that I wouldn't normally spend. And I think the Appleton Community Music Inc. Fund, like, what was the need there to get that created? Was it just so somebody had a more visible way to?
I think it was two things. One is it's a unique model in that it's a for-profit, nonprofit hybrid model, and we work together, but there's a hard line in between. They raise money and pay for things that are artist related to the festival, so that really community stuff, the Heart Tug, the music education, the artist care program that we do, they help support that, the artist hospitality, the lodging, the things that make a difference, because we try to pay fairly, but we, as a free festival, we can't pay exorbitantly, we can't pay near the top of the scale, so we try to pay fairly, and then we load in all the artist care stuff, which you've experienced in the past, whether it's the Kimberly Clark Theater now as our artist green room, our artist lounge, which is much different than, say, the initial one with the Conkeys bookstore in the back. Instead of 4 tables, we have 35 or 40, and it's a cool vibe, and we have local restaurants who provide the food, and they're just amazing partners. Again, some of that in-kind stuff. But the whole idea there is just to really create a vibe and a scene overall that we can really, make sure that the experience for the artists is top notch. And if we can do that, then they're going to want to keep coming back. And that's kind of how it's been created. And so it's really a very it's a simple idea, but it's a fairly complex fabric that's been pulled together to make it happen and make it work. It definitely probably has to change from the standpoint of, but one of those two has to change, because we just need that additional financial piece. And so when we always wanted to have a nonprofit component, it's very possible that the entire festival will become an overall nonprofit. The nonprofit's a 501c3, money given to it. You can, it's tax deductible in most cases. It's a legitimate thing. We have great people working on it, 11 board members that are working really hard at it. So it's really a situation where it just became this neat opportunity to have a little bit of both, and the opportunity for folks who wanted to support at a larger level, they could do it. It would have tax reporting ramifications for them. They can get some deductions, but also we have the sponsorship side, we have the in-kind sponsorship side that comes through, where we can still have that sort of thing for folks who want to sponsor a stage and do some of that sort of stuff. So it was a chance to create that and to start to see how it felt. I think one of the obstacles we have, no question about it, is people just assume because it's so popular as a festival that it's also extremely successful, that we're raking in money hand over fist. So we have yet to get into the black on the festival. We have shortfalled in some fashion every year. Either I do it, or somebody else, or our firm does it, or our employees do it, and that's not fair. And so ultimately, our goal is, this is the year after this year where we want to kind of take a really hard look at this and say, so where does this go? How does it get secured for the future? Because so many people have come to enjoy it and love it, that it's our job now to say, how do we make it stick around for the future? And then how do we make it stick around for our team that has worked so hard and sacrificed so much? How do they make sure that if they want to, that they can be at this for the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Well, Mile does have a very dedicated team, and I want to mention your wife, Mary, who is wonderful. I love Mary, and of course your daughter, Kim.
Yeah, she's pretty good. Yeah.
I mean, how is she taking on the festival 11 years in? I mean, originally She was at the PAC. She's still there.
Yeah.
Does she enjoy this, or has this kind of taken over your lives?
Yeah, she's awesome, and we just chatted a little bit before I left here, and in fact she said, you know where you're going, and I said, yeah, I know exactly where I'm going, and I didn't know exactly. I mixed the streets up, but it was kind of funny. But she is, she has her full-time job that she does. She used to work with our marketing firm quite a bit. She used to work for it as a full-time gig years ago, and then she's gradually moved on to a different position, but she still helps us out with things. And then with the festival, she's just kind of available, and she's a guiding force with what we're doing. Kim is awesome with, we have a team that it will do just about anything for anyone, and I feel really grateful. We have, Andrew Pearson, who does an amazing job with our merch. We sold 30% more merch last year than we ever had before. He just does such a great job. He's a tireless worker when it comes to the festival. Ian, of course, on the booking. Melissa, who does a tremendous job on the venue relations, but also helping Ian with a lot of that work that's involved in the schedule. Because, we do the schedule the old-fashioned way. We have a war room. We have the easel sheets. We have the sticky notes. Slide things around until he gets it the way he wants it. And then from there, though, it has to all be loaded into our system, and then has to, from there, get loaded into the app and the website and all that sort of stuff. So Melissa's a big part of that, and she does a great job with that. And then we have Clayton, who's our graphic designer, who does an awesome job. And so you work your way down the list. Cindy, Brenda. And so these folks are, fully committed to making sure that the community has this experience for the future. The one who is probably the unsung hero every year is Mike Van Thal. Mike is our operations leader for the festival. He sometimes is seen, but most of the time he's in the belly of the PAC, and he's the one getting all the calls during the festival. Hey, there's a little fire to put out here, there's a fire to put out there, and then he directs people to get those things taken care of. And I always say, it's not about how ready you are in terms of having everything covered, because it's not possible with the scope and the breadth of this festival. It's how ready are you to help deal with things as they come up during a festival. So,
yeah, Mike's great. If Mike's watching, I appreciate everything, Mike, that you do for us every year. We've got a call on the line. What's your question for Dave?
Oh, hi, Dave. This is your buddy, Jon Wheelock.
Oh, hey, John.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if
you said you weren't going to call. You said you weren't going to call.
I'm calling. Can you make it not as hot this next week? Is there anything way you can control that?
You're one of the handful of artists I thought of right away when I thought John's not going to be happy when he sees his forecast. Because I'll tell you, I was not happy when I saw the forecast, because I've always said humidity is something that we have a hard time being able to do anything about. I joke that we can get rain insurance, which we do. We can get all those things, but we can't get humidity insurance. So unfortunately, I think we're all going to be. I heard a little bit of an inkling that it might break a little bit by like later in the day, Saturday into Sunday. So let's just hope at least we can get something like that going. So.
Good. That's what I need. And of course, Dave, I'll stay hydrated.
That's the important part.
John, while you're on the call, I've got a question for you. What has Mile?
Let's hear it.
What has Mile meant to you? Because you've been a part of many acts and many years during Mile. What has it done for your career as a musician?
Oh, I mean, it's been great. I've been a part of it since the beginning, when it was this kind of a random thing that nobody knew. No one knew what it was, which was awesome. And and I've got to see it grow to what it is today. And I've been lucky enough. It certainly helps book the gigs throughout the year when you have some good performances at the Mile. And it's always been a blast.
And as far as playing multiple sets, you obviously played shows with Corey, Blues Talk, The Tunes. We could go on and on, but do you like that busyness of running from stage A to stage B to stage C?
As long as I got a little time in between, it's not too bad. But I just enjoy playing. So a festival like this is great for when you just want to play.
Yeah, no question about it. As he mentioned, the kind of that early on piece of it and so forth. And was saying earlier that the story about when we went in to talk to the venues that first year, they were all just kind of looking at us. And sometimes it was myself with Nathan. Sometimes I was going in with Corey. We were going in with different folks, and whenever we could, and we were having conversations, and they were looking at us like they were hearing the spiel. You know, they sit with vendors all the time, right? And here comes Dave, and we know Dave because he's doing marketing stuff for the downtown. And then we got done, and they were all like, "Okay, so waiting for the other shoe to drop, which was how much is this going to cost us?" And we said, for the first year, it's not going to cost you anything. We want to get this thing off the ground and try. And so we went into that first year, like John just said too. We went into that first year not really. It was just kind of came out of the blue. We everything was a little rushed, not a little rushed, a lot rushed. And we went into it. And you recall that first year, Fox River House ran out of beer. You know, and they had, if I remember correctly, they weren't even open on Sunday because we had to move their sets or something. I don't remember exactly how that played out, but they were a little overwhelmed, not a little, a lot overwhelmed, and so there's something about that authenticity of that first year that we've been able to kind of keep it, and we've been able to carry it through, and I think that's our mission as a community of music presenters, music attendees, is how do we continue to try to keep that authenticity no matter what happens, no matter if there's, for a part of the festival, there's a ticket fee or there's a wristband fee or whatever. However that goes in the future, how do you keep that authenticity, of that feeling of surprise and discovery and exploration? Would you agree with that, John?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's, I think that's the bread and butter of it, is that it feels like everybody's festival.
Yeah, that's right. Good. Well put. I'm writing that down, actually. So.
Well, John, thanks for the call. I look forward to catching one or more of your sets next week.
Absolutely. You guys have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, John. You
Thanks,
too.
John.
How long do you see the festival going? Would you like to see this?
I thought that was going to be a much tougher question, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Did you see the festival going on, well after you're gone?
Oh,
What do you hope
gosh.
your legacy is as far as concerning the Mile Music Festival?
No, I think everybody on the team would say, my daughter's 30 and just got married and just kind of kicking into that next gear in her life, and she does the social and the marketing and some of those type of things, and all the volunteer stuff, 600 volunteers. And by the way, they're amazing. They've been great, and we just can't thank them enough. But I think the idea for all of the team is thinking about they're all going to at some point pass the baton, and the idea would be how do we make sure that this festival's around to where we have to pass a baton. That's the most important part. You've probably read, as I have, there was just one popping into my post yesterday of a festival that went away, that stopped functioning, and they're not giving refunds either. So, and I think there were a couple earlier in the summer that did the same thing and announced that they weren't. Some of them announced hiatuses. It's been a tough road since the pandemic. Like in our case, sponsorship. Some of the $25,000 sponsorships have become 5 or 10. Some of the 5 or 10s have gone away. They've decided to sponsor something else. There's a lot going on in our community now. I feel pretty proud about the fact that we've been a big part of getting some things off the ground, in the sense that big things can happen here in Appleton and in the Fox Cities, and I think we're seeing more and more of that start to really evolve and work. And so with that happening, there's going to be competition for all those things. We just have to kind of figure out what our model is going to be, and then we also have to hope that, and we're open to ideas and suggestions, and people see me at Gibson, or they see me out at at Basil's for lunch. Don't be afraid at all to make a suggestion or idea, or send information into info@mileofmusic, because you never know when that little simple idea becomes something much bigger that has a lot of really cool aspects to it. And that's where we want that feedback from the community. And there's going to be probably a pretty good debate from folks on whether there should be this or there should be that. And I think that's a healthy thing.
Well, and Mile is unique. When it started as an all-original
Yes.
festival, and now you do have people that are probably coming to you and asking for advice how they can do their own thing, which ultimately kind of competes with you in a way.
It locally it does a little bit. It's kind of like sometimes you're your own worst enemy, in the sense of, but that was the whole idea, was to create something, create that demand, and then it's the beauty of our society and the beauty of our community is it's a pretty creative, pretty innovative community, and they're going to come up with ways to build on that, and that's how we then build a music scene. And I can't stress this enough, I guess, to folks who are listening, is it's really pretty special what has happened here, because everybody has, I say this to the Courtyard audience all the time, because you have embraced the idea, embraced the snowball. The snowball's gotten bigger, but it's gotten bigger in the right way, in the sense that these artists who are out there looking for places, they're looking for that oasis, and they found that oasis, and they tell it to me every single show we do at Gibson. We hear it. The other live music venues hear it as well. At the festival, we obviously hear it. The festival's a unique thing. The festival's like summer camp, right, for musicians, and so they're going to say it there. It's when they say it when they're walking out the door, as they're leaving a gig at 11 o'clock at night, getting ready to either drive for 6 hours to the next show or stay overnight at the band apartment that we have for them. We also have a band condo, thanks to local music fans. That just doesn't happen in other places. And so had a long chat with David Mandy from Sway Wild. Not a small act whatsoever, next level act. Both have collaborated with top-notch musicians around the country. They sat in our doorway at Gibson on their way out of their show. We ended up having we stood for 25 minutes. I was at the bar, and we stood and chatted, and what they wanted to share was, please keep doing what you're doing. And it was after the pandemic, so there was a lot of, strong feelings in a lot of different ways. And they were like, please tell the community to keep doing what they're doing, because this is so special for us as artists. And they use the term oasis, and it's an oasis for artists to come, and they know. And it isn't always that they're going to have 100 people at their shows. We've had people that have come back to Gibson, Beer Factory, other places, and the crowds have been smaller than anybody thought they were going to be for a show, right? Because there's so much going on. It's different now. But even if there's 30 people there, if 30 people who want to be there, and they're going to give them a feeling of an audience that there's like 100 or 150 people there, and that I always say it, we're small but we're strong, that kind of thing. It's a line from Kingpin, I think, and it's a
Great movie.
It's a good line. She's small but she's strong, but but it's a line that we have to use, because not every show is going to be packed to the gills and stuff, and so they appreciate the fact that when they come here, they're going to have some sort of an experience that's going to feel like validating, like this, soul enriching, as we call it, that it feels like this is worth doing.
Well, and I'll interject that I don't like to talk about myself during these shows, but I would suggest to people coming to the festival, get out early and see some of the early shows at some of the venues, because if you're not a crowd person, and you might agree, you can see a lot of the same acts that are playing earlier in a more less busy, intimate setting. And I feel that the earlier shows are going to get more and more popular, just because it's, some people like being, where everything's going on at night and all the people. But if there's something for everybody truly at this festival, just as far as if you want to see singer-songwriter, you want to see rock, you want to see hip hop. I
always say it's and we've all said this as a team, that one of the things that we were probably 2 or 3 years late on this, because it was pretty obvious early on. I think most of our music fans would tell you, well, yeah, that's been the case from the start. But because we have indoor, because we have outdoor, because we have singer-songwriter, because we have band stuff, because we have the in-between stuff, because we have now more pop-ups and we have the bus and all those things. Really, a music fan can craft the festival they want to go to, and that's what they're doing now. They're using the schedule, they're going through, they're identifying, and so they might do 12 to 3, might take a break, might go home, walk the dog, might go to dinner somewhere, come back 8 to 11 or so. Or they might do I'm doing noon to 6, and then I'm heading home, and then the other ones are coming down and doing 5 to midnight. And so you really can craft the festival that you want to do, and it's a festival within the festival, and or even just if you want to go down and go to the chapel, and you want to go to Lawrence Lawn, and you want to go to Harper Hall, and you want to hit those 3 venues on the Lawrence campus for folks who maybe have mobility issues, park near Lawrence, make your way into the chapel, make your way to Harper Hall. It's all right there. Just think of the type of music you can see just in those 3 venues alone. So we're really proud of that fact, and I think the community should be proud of the fact that the ability to do a festival within the festival has become one of the biggest things that I think is it's kind of the the thing that people don't talk a lot about, but they also very much understand is the case, and it's a value that you really can't put a number on. It's a pretty cool feel. You can come down for one day, you can come down for half a day, and get to be part of a festival that is pretty unique in the country. And I think we are very unique in the fact of who we're bringing in from an artist perspective. You know, our artists are artists that they're at the top of our poster. At most festivals are at the bottom of that, and that's just because those festivals, it's all about the bottom line. It's all about the money. They're being done either for private purposes or they're being done for some sort of an organization that's looking to make as much money as they can. And that's just never been the motivation here. It's been about creating something that is unique and special for our community. And then as we got to know the artists, I have to say, I very much got sucked into the fact that we're bringing in some very cool human beings to this community. And we've brought in thousands of them since the start of the festival in terms of the musicians who've come in, 1,100 bands and artists that have come in, 100 music educators. That's just a thing that our community should feel very, very proud about having made happen. And I think it's like with anything else. It's like if it's a really good business or a really good nonprofit, and we're kind of both, I hope. I don't know about the good business part, but we're a good community thing, and we're going to become a good business. But it's just the point of it is you have to then also assess and morph and modify as you go along. And I think we're at the point. I think everybody would say that. And I just know that from my perspective, the team has sacrificed so much that this is the off season after we hopefully have a solid festival. We work through whatever the weather issues are and so forth, that we work through those things as we always do, because we're indoor and outdoor, and that helps. But that we then have to sit down and say, how do we make sure that this is around for the future for the community, but also around for the future for the people who are making it happen.
Are you doing paper schedules again this year along with the app?
We do. The souvenir guide is something that we feel we kind of have to do. Every year we talk about not doing it because there's a cost involved. We get a nice discount from NEW Printing, but the reality is there's a cost involved. And so, but every time we talk about it, we say, yeah, but you know, it's a pretty cool thing to have that souvenir guide to see physically, you know. And I know our artists always try to grab one because their names are in it and stuff like that. And so we feel it's become a staple. We need to do it. We also want to do it for our sponsors and our partners. And it's one of the physical things you can see. And there's still something cool about that, tactile, I guess. And I know one of our team members who's since passed had a great story where he saw an older woman. He said she was probably in her early 80s, late 70s, and she was sitting at one of the venues like Copper Rock in the cafe area. And she had her pen out, and she had her glasses on the end of her nose, and she had the guide in front of her, and he walked over and he said, "Look like you're having fun." She looked up and she said, "This is my fantasy football." And so she was planning out her day and planning out doing her homework, and that's really cool.
That is awesome. And I always try to grab one just to save, and I highlight who I saw, because I know that eventually somebody's gonna blow wide open, and I want to look back and look at that and say, "Hey, I saw this set at this place this day." The bus, there's been changes to the mile bus this year. From what I hear, it's not going to be moving. Can you tell us about that?
Yep. So it's going to be like a stationary bike. It's going to be a stationary bus. It's going to be not moving. You know, the bus has been different, obviously, since the pandemic, and it changed everything in the world of public transportation and bus. You know, the idea of having a long list of available bus drivers, and that's just not reality. They've had to make changes to their schedule, and so we sit with Valley Transit, which has been a great partner. We sit with the sponsors. This year, it's Fast Signs continue to be a lead sponsor of the bus, and it was really more a matter of how can we still have the bus if we aren't going to be able to. And so the bus, because of the painting of the street, it is different now in College Avenue. The bus was already taking a different route. Last year was the first year that it went and kind of left downtown the other direction, and it kind of went around and went down to the flats area and then came back. So you didn't really see the bus much during the festival. In fact, I didn't even see it for the most part. I'd get a good look at it till the festival was just over, and I happened to see it at the bus station, which is near my office, and I happened to see it. So this year with the issue of how do we've made these changes in the bus routes, we've had to cut back services. It just didn't seem like a year where we wanted to have bus drivers dedicating their time to driving the bus for 3 days. So the solution we came up with, which I think was a pretty darn good compromise, is actually I'm looking forward to seeing if I think it's going to be pretty cool, is we're going to have the bus parked outside the PAC, and it's going to be rocking. It's going to be, and now the artists don't have to worry about bumping their teeth on the microphone. They don't have to worry about, am I going to fall over? We don't have to worry about, obviously the windows are no longer out of the bus. There were years in there where I'd be at the chapel and the bus would drive by and I'd see 3 people hanging out the window. I'm going, oh my God. So I don't have to worry about that. But we do certainly hope that we can get it back on the road at some point in the future, or maybe there's a time where maybe there's certain shows that it'll take off and drive. But this year it'll be stationary. We're going to give that a try. We're going to have some lights on the bus. We're going to make it kind of more of like just another stage. That's going to be, but it's still going to be on the bus. So I think it's going to be kind of cool.
That's gone through phases as well. Like when it started, it was kind of a really rudimentary setup for sound, and then you got this nice Bose system. But people could originally get off and on the bus as well, and then that changed to where
it has changed.
You got on it and you had to stay on it because probably
there was that
people getting off and on and pushing through.
So we got rid of the getting off and on. And I remember the first year we got a comment from one of the artists said, basically, the first year we didn't have any microphone. It was just you sat in the back of the bus and you sang, and they felt like they oversang, and so their voice was. And then we said, oh my gosh, we didn't even think of that. That's true. And so then we had a microphone the next year, and then someone said they bumped their teeth against the microphone when they went around a corner. So then we got the wind mufflers to put out, so you adapt and you adjust as you go along. So this is another thing, and this is probably still largely coming out of the pandemic and how that changed things for a lot of folks. And so, that's what we're going to do this year. We're going to give it a try, and I think it'll still be, it'll just be cool in a different way.
Saying you saw somebody on a bus is pretty fun.
It'll be cool in a different way, yeah.
We had a question here. We're getting near the end of the show. So if you have one, let me know soon. The question is, does the mix of local versus outside the state bands and international bands fluctuate each year? Also, is there offers to international bands and they turn down the offer due to costs to get to Appleton?
I think that on the second part, I think that's a challenge even within the states. Example being Rainbow Girls. Ian could talk to this better, but I think this is kind of what he would say is, we had them booked for the pandemic year, the year that we actually didn't have the festival, 2020. And it took us this long now to get them back. And it's because they're not coming from Chicago, they're coming from California, and they're routing and they're doing different things with their tour. And so to get artists to come maybe from areas where we don't have direct flights into Appleton and they aren't reasonably priced and all that sort of stuff. So there's always those obstacles. So anybody coming from a fairly long way away, I think, even you're looking at, we don't have a ton of artists coming from Austin, for example. We have a lot coming from Nashville. Well, that's just because it's an easier way to get here. It's not as expensive. There's more places to play on the way here and on the way back to be able to route. So there's a lot of things that go into it when it comes to that. But certainly for international artists, absolutely, it's a more delicate balance. And then even then, as we've seen this year, it doesn't always work out the way you want it to. If they can't get their visas and so forth, all of a sudden you lose an artist or you lose 2 artists. And so, but we're going to keep trying. We're going to keep working that, and we're going to keep trying to perfect the process of how we can do it. It's just whenever there's other aspects involved, like getting a visa and so forth, that can become problematic or become another obstacle. As far as the state and local artists, we feel really, really proud and good about the fact that that number has always been strong, and it's continued to get stronger. I think we're somewhere in the 40 to 45% of the artists at the festival this year, or the sets at the festival this year, are being performed by local and state artists. And we look at them as being quasi co-hosts of the festival, right? They know the area, they know things, and we hope that they get chances to meet some of the other artists. It's partly on them to do that at the artist lounge and different places, at the hotel and stuff. But that's a really important piece of it for us. I think it's always been pretty good. There were times maybe it was 30, 35%, 25%, but generally speaking, it's been really strong, and it's a purposeful thing. Having said that, the challenge is one that you brought up earlier, which is there's got to be artists who are disappointed. There's got to be, it's the hardest part for us as presenters of the festival, is having to say no. Not everybody can play every year. And so I'm always having to go back and look when we're doing stuff like at Gibson's, say, are they playing this year? Like we have a band tonight, Old Oaks, at Gibson. I had to go back and look. Are they playing this year? No, we have we have this band and we have this other band, but we don't have them this year. Whatever it might be. When we had Wire and Nail at Courtyard recently, I was like, "Are they playing this year?" And I had to go up and ask, "Are you playing the festival this year?" And they said, "We are, 2 sets." And so, the goal is to try to, and some of that relates to, do they have new material out? Are they still playing pretty regularly? That all kind of factors into things too. So,
a personal observation, I noticed that bands Mile Music has really changed the local music scene as far as people are timing their releases to come out like a month before Mile or even closer, so they've got something fresh to promote during Mile. Yeah. So that's been interesting. It also seems like there's more bands forming because of the interest in music, which is a direct result of what you've done. I've been kind of neglecting some of the questions here, so I'm going to try to get to them quick.
Yeah, let me also just say that along those lines, one of the kudos to the venues and all the patios that are out there in the summer stuff. What I've really been impressed with is, it doesn't happen this way in other communities, but there's a lot more music, but a lot of that music is still original, and that's been a huge piece of helping to create the scene, no question about it.
We had a question from Bob Minter. Did the Rolling Stone article surprise you?
And that could be two ways to that. Maybe the content of it, did it surprise us, or just the fact that it came along and came up. It didn't, in the sense that that huge shout out to Jamie Kent. Jamie, good friends with the Nashville editor of Rolling Stone, Joe Hudak, who came to the festival last year, was planning to come this year, but he had to bump out because they have a big event going on now that he has to host down in Nashville. Huge fan of the festival all of a sudden, Joe is. And Jamie was talking to Joe for probably 2 years about that article. Like, you need to do something on Appleton. You need to do something on Appleton. And Joe was like, "I'm going to, for sure." And then finally Jamie just said, "Listen, you bump or get off the pot," because, and so Joe was, laughed and said, "Yeah." And so, great appreciation to Joe for having made that article happen. It's a cool thing. I don't think it had a major impact on the festival, and I'm actually probably okay with that, because, again, we're trying to kind of control the infrastructure. I think the PBS broadcasting coming this year and doing a docu-feature to air in 2025, that'll probably have more of an impact on the festival and the brand and the community, in the sense of the fans of PBS Wisconsin, many of them anyway, are in the same demographic. They're in the same, kind of area of looking for things to do within the state and stuff like that. And so I think that's going to probably have a more significant impact on what we're about. But yeah, I was really thrilled with the way the Rolling Stone article turned out. I'm trying to think back. I think it had a lot of the things. I think both Ian and I did interviews for that one, and then Jamie Kent did, and just and I'm talking to the writer. Joe was going to do the article himself, and then his mom passed away, and he had a very strange kind of time frame that he just couldn't control. So he assigned the article to a writer who had been years and years following bands of this type around the country. And when he did the interview, and Ian said the same thing, he was beside himself, excited about the things that we were doing as a festival. The artist care he could not believe. The providing the lodging and making it easy for the artist to get here, and then, as Jamie put in the article, getting treated like rock stars when they're here for the weekend. He just thought that was the coolest thing. And he said, I'm hearing from other festivals, when I talk to them, they're saying, well, we're starting to do some things like Mile of Music is doing them. And he said, so when I hear that, he said, I know that you guys are doing something right. So that was the coolest part of that article for me, anyway.
Brad Bordini had a question.
We don't want to hear from Brad. That's just not.
Said, "Hey guys, Dave, when do you plan to sleep? Thank you for all you and your crew do."
It's very nice of him, and Brad, shout out back to you, and good luck with all of, we all send healing wishes to Brad, and it's one of those things too for us where, it's the only, I tell people all the time, because it's a legitimate question I get asked a lot, and it's like, there's sleep, but it's like, as soon as the sleep is you get a certain amount in, and then when one eye kind of partly opens, it's like you're up, because there's just, your mind starts racing. And so the nice part of that is, generally speaking, as soon as the festival's over, we at least get a couple days in there where the mind doesn't have to race, and so you actually get some rest. So there's a difference between sleep and rest, I think. So yeah.
Another question from Tim: is there any possibility of live streaming some of the shows on YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, those are all those extra things. We have a long list of some really cool stuff. We do record a lot of the shows. We haven't done much with them yet, but we're planning to do some things with them, of course, with the artist's permission and so forth. So we have a lot of amazing content. One of the cool things, by the way, with PBS Wisconsin being here this year, they're going to film over 1,000 hours of film of our downtown, of all these stages, of all this music. They're only going to use about 20, 25 minutes of it in their docu-feature, right, when it all comes down to it, because they'll have interviews and other things. So they're excited about the content they're going to come away with. They're actually, I think, oftentimes more excited about the content they come away with when they do these programs than the program itself. And so we're going to have access to some of that content as well. And so I think it's going to be I hope it you always knock on wood for a good festival. You hope that the weather is at least somewhat compliant. And so our goal is, that's going to be some great content. We have great audio content that we've taken. We've talked about doing some different things. We've talked to a couple of the video streamers in the region, in the area, about maybe developing some of that during some of the venues. And so I think to Tim's question, I think that is absolutely part of the future.
And I know we're a little bit over. I appreciate you being so generous with your time. As far as bands pulling out, we're getting near the point. You've got the schedules printed. We're at the point where bands, all of a sudden, we'll get one or two bands that say they're pulling out. Then you've got to get the schedule updated on the app.
Curveballs, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of having the app, is that we can get that in the website. We can get that done. We had a glitch with the app. It wasn't with the app or the website. It wasn't our local providers. It was with the company that's behind that creates stores all the data and so forth. And we got that. We identified the issue. We got it addressed. Had to pay a little more money to get a little more storage and stuff. I think it surprised them a little bit. And so we got that figured out. And now I believe the app and the web are back on track. And there shouldn't be an issue for next week. But it's one of those things where it's a huge plus for us to have those platforms when we have to make changes and stuff. Because I think probably 80-90% of the attendees are paying attention to the app when it comes to the schedule. We try to tell them, look at the app. It's the most recent thing, and the website. And so then I think you have the guide, but you almost have the guide as more of your kind of that physical souvenir, and then you're probably even still going on the app to say, was it still happening at that time?
Yeah.
By the way, I do want to just do a shout out to the Mile team, the production team, the EPS folks. Aaron Dusterheft, who oversees all the production cats. I had this comment made to me the other day that they went to a festival recently, and I experienced it myself a few years ago when I went to Americana Fest in Nashville. I haven't been back to Americana Fest itself. Went down there around Americana Fest time a couple years ago, and we went to some off Americana Fest shows. But they made the comment on how they are amazed every year, despite whatever gets thrown at us, these curveballs at the end, weather issues and so forth. They're amazed that the shows happen in the same time frame that they're supposed to happen. Yeah, you might have one 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late. I don't think that's happened very often. You might have them start a little early even in some cases. But they are amazed at how on schedule everything is. And I've been to other festivals, and they had been to one where everything was about a half hour, 45 minutes, or it was completely, they would go to a show and the band wasn't going to be playing for an hour, or they went to one and the band had already started. And so I just want to do a shout out to the team and the venues. Get huge credit for that as well, but the production team and the technology team and Dave Radley and all he does for us with Backline for the stages that have bands, it's an intricate web that we have there, and it's just impressive. And it's one of those things I think we all, as music fans and experiential fans, you kind of at a certain point take for granted. And so make sure when you're at a show, even if there's some technical issues and so forth, make sure to give a kudo to the tech, because they're working hard for us, and they've just done a great job.
And I want to thank you, Dave. I know sometimes it's hard for you to take compliments, but I want to thank you for everything that you've done for the community. It's being somebody that's been in the scene for quite a while. Mile Music has been a huge change to the music scene around here. I believe you deserve a lot of credit for that.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that very much. And I'm better at taking compliments after the festival when we know that maybe they're deserved. So.
And in closing, I want to say Appleton again. It keeps appearing on lists of the greatest places to live. It recently came out that it was number 5, and again, I feel that is in no small part to Mile. So again, thank you for that.
I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that I tell the team all the time, a lot of this stuff that's happened in our downtown, the 12 building projects, all the cool stuff, people wanting to live downtown. The same thing happened in Boise when Tree Fort was created about a year before we were created. From what I understand, there wasn't a lot of interest in their downtown, and all of a sudden there was. And so it's events like this, it's experiences like Farm Market, it's experiences like the Downtown Concert Series. It's all kinds of stuff that Oktoberfest that weaves together to make. I always feel, and this is just a real simple way of putting it, we have a Fox Cities area, we have multiple communities, we have multiple downtowns, we have a larger downtown that to me is the hub. And if we can keep our hub strong and we can keep our hub of interest to people, then I think that just feeds off into everything else. And so that's always been my feeling. Our business is located downtown. We've done a lot for downtown over the years. We try to do that. And so this was created with the idea that let's have something that people want to talk about downtown Appleton, and therefore they talk about the Fox Cities too.
Mile Music taking place next week. It's always the first weekend in August. Go downtown, download the app, get your schedule ready.
Start doing your homework, yeah.
Start doing your homework.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Dave Willems, Mile Music founder. Hope we have a lot more we didn't talk about, so I hope you come back. We
Absolutely.
can talk about Gibson and the Mile down the road, everything.
We'll do that for sure. Yeah, see me at. Look forward to seeing everybody at the Mile, but see me at the Mile or see me at Gibson, and like I said, you can also oftentimes catch me at any one of the downtown establishments on the patio having a sandwich. So just stop over and give me your ideas, give me your thoughts, and we'd be happy to put them into operation with what we're doing into the future.